The countdown is on, but you're not alone. This is Countdown to College, your weekly guide from Education Quest Foundation, here to help you plan, apply, and pay for college one step at a time. I'm your host, Gage, and today I am joined by Natalie Becerra, a career development specialist at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Hi, Natalie. Thanks for hopping on.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Now, when we talk about college on this podcast, we don't just mean, one path. So today, Natalie and I are going to kind of break down what higher education looks like today, why it's valuable, and how it can shape your future. So, Natalie, why don't you just kick us off by kind of explaining what we mean when we say the word, college? Does it only mean a four-year degree?
I think it can mean different things, especially depending on kind of what your ultimate career goal looks like. You might have to take different pathways to get there. And college, I think, has become kind of a catch all term that we use. It could mean a 4-year degree, it could mean a 2-year degree, it could mean going to trade school. So I think it's a little bit overarching these days. And there's some variety depending on what you're pursuing as your path.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad it gets talked about more often now because I just remember being a kid and thinking, oh, college, that's a four-year degree at a big university, like very strict path, but there's a lot more options than we thought.
Yeah.
And so why has, earning some sort of post-secondary credential, whether that's, like you said, an associate's two-year degree, a four-year degree, a bachelor's, why is that so important in today's workforce?
Yeah, I think that earning a high school diploma or GED is just not quite as specialized depending on the field that you want to go into. Again, you're going to hear that a lot from me. It depends what field you're going into. But K through 12 education still has some core requirements that have to be met. And even if you're in more of that specialized program, I see some high schools moving towards career academies and things like that, where you are maybe taking more of a focused curriculum, but it's still not quite as specialized or advanced developmentally as going to get a 2 or 4 year degree or even like a specialization in something like a trade. And so I think that pursuing that next step is really helpful in a lot of ways. I think probably the biggest reason to pursue it is your earning potential down the line. And so I actually tried to dig into some data for this, but I found from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that you have a higher earning potential if you do pursue something beyond a GED or a high school education. And so at a quick glance, those with less than a high school diploma have a median annual income of $38,000-ish. Those with a high school diploma have a median annual income of $49,000. And those with an associate's degree, so like a 2-year degree, would be $54,000. And those with a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year degree, would have a median annual income of $79,000. So I mean, things are just getting more and more expensive, and it is expensive to be an adult when you're paying all of your own bills. So I think that earning potential is really a huge way to attract people to getting that more advanced degree. And of course, this also depends where you're living and all sorts of other considerations as far as these numbers go. But it kind of just demonstrates that if you do get that more advanced specialized degree, you could make more in the long run. So it could be a really great investment that you see a return on in the future.
Yeah, I almost graduated 2 years ago now, so I am fully immersed in the world of adult bills and having to be responsible.
Yeah, it's a lot. And so I think it can really make a big difference down the line.
And so, I mean, we talked about it just for a second, but how should, students and families really think about that value proposition of college? And when we say that, we mean, the cost of tuition and maybe student debt compared to your long-term earning potential.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I do as a career coach is try to help students find alignment between what they're good at, what they enjoy doing, and what they can make a living doing. And so ideally, I want to find the path that makes the most sense to find alignment with all of those things. Sometimes money can also be a big determining factor in that because maybe you really enjoy one thing, you're really talented at it, and that's what you want to pursue. and you can't make the financial investment right now, you might want to look at a different path. So I always say you should start with evaluating your current financial situation. That is usually a big deciding factor for people of deciding, okay, am I going to pursue a trade? Am I going to do a 2-year program? Am I maybe going to start at community college with my general education requirements and then transfer to a 4-year degree and finish that? Or am I going to go straight into a 4-year degree? Those are kind of the pathways I'm seeing a lot of people considering. And so definitely, this is my plug for Education Quest. Reach out to you all to see what option makes the most sense financially. But I think that, like I said, the value is that you can be earning more long term if you are pursuing that advanced degree. And so the investment is big up front, but hopefully you're going to see that big return, especially depending on what field you go into. There are certain tools out there where you can also evaluate what industries are emerging, what jobs might be hot by the time that you're about to graduate, things like that. If you want to feel a little bit more secure about that opportunity that you're pursuing. But yeah, I just think that going for that more advanced degree, it can help you in the long run, but I also think it gives you so many great skills to really set you up just in life in general. I think there's so much to be learned during that time while you're in college, which I know we'll get into, but I think that if you can make the investment, it's going to be really worth it.
We do have an episode about trending jobs in the job chart coming out in November, so stay tuned for that, y'all.
Amazing.
But sticking, I know you kind of brought it up already, college is a pretty big investment. And I mean, we all know it's talked about a lot that the cost of higher education continues to rise. Do you think that's changed the equation at all for whether college is, worth it?
Yeah, I think it's making people second guess things a lot more. I think for a long time, it just seemed like the really natural next step for a lot of families to be like, okay, once my student graduates from high school, they're going to go to college, and that's what we're going to do. Um, and I think now there is a little bit more pause because it is a big thing to consider, especially depending what type of college you go to. There's private institution versus public institutions, state schools versus universities, all the things. There's a lot of nuance, and with those nuances come different price tags. And so I think you really have to look at what type of program is the best fit for you. I see a lot more students these days considering pathways that are maybe a little less traditional based on how things have typically been done more recently, but things that are going to save money, like doing some of those general education requirements at a community college and transferring in. I know in our college, we're seeing that a lot more. I think our transfer students doubled this year of students who are doing that path. And so I think that is a way that people can start thinking about saving money in that investment, is starting somewhere that might be less expensive for more of those general education requirements, and then transferring into that 4-year degree plan to finish out that bachelor's degree if that's what aligns with your career goals. Otherwise, I think there's also going to be a rise in considering other trades, more specialized programs that are maybe shorter, and maybe a lower investment than we've been seeing with college. I think that's just going to continue to rise in popularity. I'm already hearing that a lot more high school guidance counselors are promoting that as more of an option than they used to. So I think the shift is starting to happen because student loan debt is like this looming cloud that I think a lot of people are scared of. So they're considering some other options and seeing what is all out there besides maybe what they were told to do or thought that they would do.
Yeah, thankfully, I took a bunch of dual credit classes actually in high school, and that saved me a lot of money just in terms of gen eds. So I think it's really important to kind of, explore your options. And like you said earlier, kind of assess your current financial situation and where you might be in 4 years when you do graduate. So digging just a little bit more into, we talked about, community colleges and skilled trades, which also that means more than just, I feel like people think that means, like a mechanic or something, but it can mean even cosmetology school. what role do those play in meeting the needs of today's economy?
I think they're meeting such a big need. I mean, we need a diverse workforce to make the world go round. We can't all be sitting at corporate jobs in a cubicle because other things need to get done. So I think that we need to have diversity in what people are doing. And there's a lot of value in a lot of different career paths. I think that maybe not for the best reasons, we've put having a 4-year degree or certain types of jobs on a pedestal. But we also need people who are going to do those like skilled trades. And so I think that it's very needed. And also with some of those, you have really great earning potential. And so I think it is something to really consider. We all have different talents and interests and types of work environments that we want to work in. And so I think if you especially want something that is more hands-on, like doing something, making something, I think trades are really great to look into, whether it's even something related to healthcare, like going more of the dental hygiene route. Sometimes that doesn't require a 4-year degree. That can be more of a specialized program. It's very hands-on. Could be being an electrician. It could be so many things. It could still be a really fulfilling career path that is a huge contribution to our society working the way it should be. So I think we shouldn't be putting one type of career path over the other on a pedestal. They're all so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. For students who, do end up choosing college, whether that's the 2-year, 4-year trade, whatever we talked about, how big of a factor is student loan debt? We kind of talked about it, it's kind of that thing that's looming off in the distance when you think about college. And what does repayment really look like after graduation?
Yeah, I think that student loan debt has become almost like normalized. I think a lot of people expect to take it on. And for a lot of people, it can be very crippling. It's not great that I think it is the norm. I think in an ideal world, we would start saving and investing in that educational option as early as possible to cut down on loans. But I know that's also not possible for everyone. And so loans might be your best option. Um, I always recommend that before people commit to loans, really read into what that loan entails. What's the repayment period look like? What does the interest rate look like? All of those things. So you really know what you're getting into and what your grace period is after graduation and all of that. So you can really plan ahead. The thing that is sad is when people just go into something and they haven't read that fine print. So I always say, look at all of your options. And again, I know I'm like on this Education Quest podcast, so people probably know what Education Quest is, but I know that you all have resources where you can really look at a lot of different options. And I think beyond loans, taking any opportunity to apply for scholarships or grants is really great. That's free money that you don't have to repay. So if you can ever find any of those, that is super helpful to cut down on the cost. And so I think with student loan debt, obviously the landscape is shifting a lot about loan forgiveness, whether that's happening or not, what it looks like. So stay up to date, but also stay educated on what the details and the terms are of that loan before committing. So then you really know what to expect and can be mindful of that moving forward. And also, you might consider certain career paths if they have a loan repayment option. I know some students, for example, who go the medical route. There's some options for students who go work in rural hospitals to get repayments or things like that. So maybe also considering those options too, if there is something like that in your field you're interested in, where maybe you do that type of work for a little bit to get loans repaid. So then you can then pivot into something once you're more financially secure. So you got to kind of play the long game with your career. You aren't just going to have your dream job right off the bat, unless you're really lucky. That's fantastic. And you're going to maybe have to work up to it. And I think the loan repayment is a big step to also consider in that pathway to your dream.
Yeah, I'm glad, you brought that up because we do encourage a lot Education Quest to kind of really explore your options, especially those scholarships and grants like you talked about. There's a lot of people who will avoid the FAFSA even because they think that they won't qualify for anything when really you never know. Just fill it out because it unlocks a lot of more options than you want to have before that. So
Yep.
moving kind of away from, earning potential and money, money, money. What are just some of the, like the personal benefits of like the college experience, like living on campus, gaining independence, getting to build relationships? What does that look like?
Yeah, honestly, I think the college route, if you can afford it and it's a good option for what you want to do, I highly recommend it for that developmental aspect. I think that it's that nice bridge between high school life, living at home, like being kind of more dependent on your family in some ways before you're fully independent and out in the workforce. It's kind of that like bridge in between where you will have a lot more support systems in place. There's built in social opportunities. There's usually on campus resources for your mental and physical wellness, for your financial support, all sorts of things. And I think that it helps you ease into that next step of being more independent. And I think that the social part is so big because I know even like the transition from college to the working world for a lot of students is tough. And that's even after they've had kind of that transition to independence. Because once you're out of a school setting, you have a lot less built-in social like connections where like you're not going to classes and meeting new people. You're not going to events that are easily accessible all the time, things like that, unless it's part of your workplace. But a lot of times it's put on you to seek out those things. And I think college is a great way where sometimes you're kind of forced out of your comfort zone, but it's in more of that like safe environment, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
where it's a little bit more contained and controlled. You're put in situations with your peers that are fun and challenging. And it feels a little less stressful than you walking into a room completely by yourself. I think it just eases that transition in so many ways. And the built-in support system is huge. I know, especially at UNL, but a lot of colleges, honestly, it is really important that we provide those supports to students. Student success is a huge thing that schools are really mindful of how do we support students academically, socially, all financially, all the things to make sure that they are put in the best position to succeed. And so I think if you can put yourself in an environment to have that support, it's huge in that transitional period of your life.
Yeah, I mean, even in shout out to Natalie because she was actually my career
Mhm.
coach when I went to
Yeah.
UNL. But shout out to, career service offices that a lot of colleges do have because you might not always get access to those resources if you don't go to college. I've told the story before, but I started out as a theater major and found out I have a knack for social media. And because of career services, I was able to kind of figure out how to market myself, got my job here at Education Quest, so shout out. And so I think, I really wouldn't have gotten a lot of those experiences, especially the networking and the relationships like you talked about if I hadn't put myself out there and gone to college.
And I think approaching the job search is so overwhelming and confusing to a lot of people, whether you're a first generation student or not. Like it's confusing to everyone that I work with. And so, I mean, shameless plug for what I do, but I think having career support throughout your college experience is so helpful in making sure that you know how to write a strong resume, you know how to apply for things, where to look for them, how to build a network, how to present yourself professionally, all of those things. And I think without pursuing college, it can feel a lot more scary and daunting to learn those things. I mean, there's plenty of resources out there, but it's almost information overload. So I
Mhm.
think that is another huge benefit that I'm glad you brought up is those career centers that help you figure out what you want to do and how to get there and support you in that process.
Turning now back towards some other factors of the college experience, one being, college level coursework, which is, if you were used to sitting in class all day in high school and not really having to study much, You're going to want to rethink that a little bit when you get to college. So, how does the challenge of, college level coursework push students to grow both academically and personally?
I think the biggest difference is that you will be put in positions to think critically. I think a lot of K through 12 education is about memorizing and learning those really foundational skills. And it's almost like this is the next step of applying that in really creative, innovative, complex ways. Because when you're in the workforce, you have to do a lot of problem solving on the fly, no matter what industry you work in. So we are trying to put students in positions where they have to think critically, they have to be creative, they have to solve problems. And I know in the college I work for, it's very hands on. There's a lot of group projects, which might be a little bit different, where in K through 12, you're really focused on your academic success and your test results and all of those things. Whereas in college, some of your grade might be reliant on how your group does, which is very similar to a lot of workplaces because some workplaces are just a big group project, to be quite honest. So you're going to learn how to work with different people, how to motivate yourself and motivate each other, how to meet deadlines, how to solve problems, how to solve interpersonal conflicts that arise. And so I think that the curriculum will look a little bit different where it is so application based and you're doing a lot of things. Depending on your path, it might be less about writing things and it might be doing things, unless you're on a track where writing is a bigger thing. You'll still be writing a lot. But I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to develop those critical thinking skills so you can be in the workforce and ready for whatever is thrown at you and be able to be resilient and be able to solve problems and be curious and be innovative, because that's what employers are looking for. We're all trying to solve problems and make things better. And so we need people who can think that way.
Yeah, and I don't want to, scare people away either. It is difficult coursework, but I know for me personally, like since it was, my major and it was something I was interested in, I kind of enjoyed the challenge a little bit. And I feel like if you go in with that mindset, like it really helps.
And I think, again, that's like the benefit of these more specialized degree programs, is that, yes, you might have some general education requirements, but those are meant to help you think in different ways and how to learn different types of information. But you really then get to dive deep into a content area that hopefully you're really interested in. And it can be really fun. It can be really fulfilling. And it's kind of a taste of what you would be doing in your career. And so it can be really exciting. Yes, it's going to be challenging, but like you said, hopefully it's challenging, but in a fun way because you like that content. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really exciting time. Yes, I don't want to scare people. It is more rigorous in some ways, but also sometimes more fun because it is
Yeah.
more focused on what you want to be doing.
Turning just a little bit now towards post graduation again.
Mhm.
With the job market evolving so quickly, I mean, technology is changing by the second at this point. How important is being adaptable, and does college prepare students for that?
I think it's probably one of the most important skills to develop. It is something you have to develop. I think that maybe people have a predisposition towards being more adaptable than other people, but it is something you have to really learn and lean into. And a lot of times you learn to be adaptable through having to face challenges. And I think that college can put you in some of those situations to build that adaptability, and resilience is a big thing that I focus on with students, of knowing we're going to face obstacles and knowing that, okay, we can deal with this, we have dealt with this, and now we know how to overcome it in the future. That's having a resilient mindset. And I think with adaptability, a big thing that I talk about with my students is not to be too narrow in your focus. A lot of times I'm trying to help students be more zoomed out, thinking through things broadly, because I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're pigeonholed into only one option, because really a lot of times you can use transferable skills to do a lot of different things. So I am trying to help people be adaptable in that way of, If technology really changes and there's a lack of entry level jobs in that field by the time you graduate, okay, let's think about how you're going to use your skill set differently and let's pivot to something else where you can still use that skill set because we can use it somewhere else. That wasn't the only option. And even if you do something really technical, if you're, I don't know, an electrician, I don't know, something really, really skilled and specific, you still have these transferable skills of being able to solve complex problems, being meticulous and detail oriented. You can think about those skills in different ways in different industries. It's challenging, but you can do it, and it's something you have to develop. And I think you need to be ready to do that because more often than not, you're going to pivot into something different at some point in your career because probably you're going to want to do something different or make more money, or you just hate it and you need something completely different. So I think you need to be prepared to be adaptable. It's almost inevitable, especially in this quickly evolving landscape.
Yeah. Like I said, I was a theater major. I did theater all through college, and here I am doing social media marketing. Like,
Transferable skills.
yes, great communicators. I mean, we know storytelling. Like, the biggest thing, and that's what, career services and Natalie helped me kind of discover was that those transferable skills that I developed, I could really market myself on. And, that doesn't mean I quit acting or anything. I still do community theater. I still do some short films, get myself involved, but I'm also doing, something else that I didn't know would interest me, but it does.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example of thinking broadly about your options. You can still fulfill those interests and loves that you have and also use your skills in other ways. So, yeah.
All right, Natalie, I got one final question for you. This is kind of looking ahead into the future here. We don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think the way we view and pursue college will change in the next decade?
Yes. I think the most constant thing is change. And I kind of hinted at this earlier, but I think people are going to take different pathways into their career. I think we are not going to default as much to you need to pursue a 4-year degree after graduation. I think that people are going to consider different options like community college before going to a 4-year degree. We're already seeing that happen. I think people will more seriously consider trades and associate's degrees, those 2-year degrees through community colleges. And yeah, I think that there's not going to be one set path that we're really going to push as much. I think we're going to look more broadly at the options. I think that's the biggest thing. And yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball and could tell you what was going to happen. That would be great. But like we said, I just think you need to be prepared to be adaptable because we don't know what it's going to look like. And I think there's going to be a lot of different pathways to get where you need to go.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was all of my questions. Thank you again, Natalie, for joining us.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me.
And to our audience, if you ever need help with anything college planning related, you can contact an Education Quest office near you for free help. And you can find our contact information or schedule an appointment at educationquest.org. While you are there, also sign up for the weekly Countdown to College email that's filled with college tips and tricks. And finally, just help us get this message out to as many students and families as possible by hitting the like button on this episode and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Thanks for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.